Sometimes, the place that saves you from danger becomes the place that destroys you. A stag ran from hunters with fear burning through his body. He found a stable and hid among the oxen. For a moment, he could breathe again. The oxen protected him. The servants passed without seeing him. And slowly, something dangerous happened. He became comfortable. One ox warned him, "Leave before the master comes." But fear had already changed into false confidence. The stag believed that because danger had not found him yet, he was safe. This is where the ancient story becomes more than a fable. Because human beings do the same thing. We hide inside comfortable habits. We remain in places that no longer serve us. We mistake silence for peace, shelter for safety, and temporary relief for freedom. The warrior understands something different. Safety is not the absence of danger. Sometimes safety requires the discipline to move. The path demands courage, and the spirit must learn when to leave. The forest was loud with death. Branches snapped beneath the stag's hooves as he ran. His breath came in sharp bursts, and his heart hammered against his ribs. Behind him, the hunters were closing in. He did not know where he was going. He only knew he had to keep moving. Every sound became a warning. Every shadow looked like an enemy. Every sudden movement sent another wave of fear through his body. This is what fear does. It narrows the world. The mind stops thinking about tomorrow. Purpose or direction, it thinks only about survival. The stag did not need to understand why his body was reacting this way. His nervous system already knew the answer. Run, so he ran, until, through the trees, he saw something unexpected. A stable inside were oxen, sheltered from the chaos outside. The stag hesitated for only a moment before rushing inside. The oxen looked at him. The stag lowered his head, almost as if pleading. "My brothers, I am being hunted. Please do not betray me." The oxen agreed. The stable was safer than the forest. But safer did not mean safe. That distinction is where wisdom begins. The stag had won his first battle. He had escaped the hunters. But he had not yet won the battle within himself. He still had to decide what came next. The goal of discipline is not simply to escape pain. It is to remain clear enough to make the right decision after the pain has passed. Fear can make you move, but only wisdom can tell you where to go. The stag did not understand this yet. He looked around the stable. The oxen were calm, food was nearby, the walls were strong. No enemy appeared. For the moment, everything seemed perfect. And that is how many traps begin. Not with pain, with comfort. A dangerous place does not always announce itself. Sometimes it gives you exactly what you have been begging for. Rest, protection, acceptance. A place where nobody asks questions. A place where you can finally lower your guard. The problem begins when you forget why you entered. The stag entered the stable because he was running from death. He was supposed to use it as refuge, not as a home. There is a difference between resting on the path and abandoning the path. True discipline meant remaining awake to reality, even during peace. The stag had not learned this yet. He was simply grateful that the running had stopped, and perhaps we should not judge him too quickly, because human beings do the same thing. A person leaves a painful relationship and finds a comfortable distraction. Someone escapes financial pressure and becomes afraid to take another risk. Someone survives failure and spends years avoiding anything that might make them vulnerable again. Someone grows tired of fighting and begins calling their hiding place peace. But peace that requires you to stop growing is not always peace. Sometimes it is fear wearing comfortable clothes. The stag stood among the oxen, listening to them chew. Outside, the forest waited. Inside, the stable felt warm. His body wanted to stay. His fear wanted to stay. And fear is persuasive. It tells you, you have suffered enough. Do not move. Do not risk anything. Stay where nothing can hurt you. But the path does not always ask what feels comfortable. Sometimes the path asks what makes you stronger. This is why discipline is different from motivation. Motivation says, move when you feel ready. Discipline says, move because you know what must be done. The stag was not ready, but readiness was not the question. The question was whether the stable was truly his destination. It was not. It was only shelter. And shelter has a purpose. It gives you enough strength to continue. The mistake is believing that shelter is the journey itself. The oxen had offered him kindness, and that kindness mattered. Without them, perhaps the stag would have been caught immediately. But kindness could not remove the responsibility of choice. No one else could walk his path for him. No one else could recognize every danger for him. And no one else could decide when it was time to leave. The warrior eventually learns an uncomfortable truth. Protection is valuable, but awareness is priceless. You can be surrounded by good people and still be in the wrong place. You can be comfortable and still be vulnerable. You can be alive and still be moving away from the life you were meant to live. The stag had escaped the hunters. Now he needed to escape something more subtle, his own desire to remain comfortable. For that night, however, he stayed. The stable grew quiet. The oxen settled. The stag lowered himself into the hay. His breathing became peaceful, and for a moment he believed the danger was over. But the forest had not changed. The hunters had not disappeared, and somewhere beyond the stable walls, the world was still moving. The stag had found shelter. He had not yet found safety. And soon the greatest threat would not come from the hunters. It would come from the comfort that taught him to stop watching. The chase had ended, but the stag's real test was only beginning, because when fear becomes quiet, complacency begins to speak. Morning came quietly. A pale light entered through the gaps in the stable walls. The oxen began to move. Servants arrived. Hay was carried inside, water was poured into troughs, and the wooden doors opened and closed as another ordinary day began. And the stag remained hidden. He watched the servants pass close to him. One walked directly beside him. Another carried food only a few steps away. Neither noticed him. The stag held his breath, then slowly released it. Nothing happened. Again, nothing happened. And something inside him began to change. The fear that had controlled him was fading, but something more dangerous was taking its place. Confidence. At first, this confidence helped him recover. His body was healing. His mind was becoming calmer. But then he made a subtle mistake. He began to believe that because something had worked before, it would always work. The stag thought, "If they did not see me yesterday, they will not see me today." This is one of the oldest traps of the human mind. Repeated success can make us believe we are safer than we truly are. The absence of consequences can feel like proof that our choices are correct. But sometimes it is not wisdom. Sometimes it is simply time passing. The stag did not understand the difference. Each day he remained hidden. His confidence grew. Every servant who failed to notice him became another reason to stay. The stable became familiar. The hay became comfortable. The oxen became companions. And the place that was meant to be temporary shelter slowly became his home. This is how comfort builds its cage. It does not lock the door suddenly. It closes it slowly, one excuse at a time. One comfortable decision after another, until eventually you forget there was ever a door. The stag had forgotten the forest. He had forgotten the hunters. Most importantly, he had forgotten why he entered the stable. Then one of the older oxen looked toward him. The ox had been watching quietly. He was not afraid. He was aware. He understood something the stag refused to see. The stable had not been fully inspected. The master had not yet arrived. The ox warned him. "You may think you are safe, but the master has not yet come." Simple words. But sometimes the deepest wisdom comes in the simplest form. The greatest danger is not always the danger that attacks you. Sometimes it is the danger you stop respecting. The stag heard the warning. But he did not move. Why? Because comfort had already changed the way he thought. He had survived another day, then another, then another. So why leave now? The stag saw the stable. He saw the calm oxen. He saw the servants ignoring him, but he did not see the missing piece, the master, the person whose eyes mattered most. And this is a lesson beyond the forest. Do not measure danger only by what has happened. Measure it by what could still happen. A quiet road can still lead to danger. A calm sea can still hide a storm. A comfortable habit can still destroy your future. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is simply the moment before something changes. The stag was not being asked to live in panic. He was being asked to remain awake. He had escaped one danger. Now he needed the discipline to complete his escape. Instead, he chose comfort. Perhaps he believed the oxen would protect him. Perhaps he thought the servants would never notice. Perhaps he believed the master would never come. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. He stopped moving. And when movement stops, growth often stops with it. The stag called his waiting patience. But it was not true patience. It was hesitation disguised as patience. He was waiting because leaving was uncomfortable, and there is a difference. Sometimes people say, "I am waiting for the right time." But deep inside, the truth is, I am afraid of what happens when I move. The forest represented uncertainty. The stable represented predictability. And many creatures choose predictable pain over uncertain freedom. But growth rarely comes with guarantees. The stag had no map. He did not know where the hunters were. He did not know where true safety existed. But he knew one thing. Staying in one place forever was not the answer. Still, he stayed. The days continued. The servants came. The servants left. The stag remained invisible. And every successful hiding became another reason for him to believe he had defeated danger. But there is a difference between being wise and being lucky. Wisdom adapts. Wisdom observes. Wisdom understands that yesterday's solution may not protect tomorrow. The stag's strategy had worked, but the situation was changing. He simply could not see it yet. That is what makes complacency dangerous. The threat does not always become stronger. Sometimes you simply become less aware. The stag had almost forgotten the fear of the hunt. His heart no longer raced at every sound. His body no longer trembled. He was comfortable. And comfort is valuable when it follows discipline. But comfort without awareness becomes weakness. The stable had given him rest. Now it was taking away his urgency. The wise ox watched him quietly. Perhaps he already understood how the story would unfold. Because sometimes the person who sees danger first is not the one experiencing it. It is the one who can see the whole picture. The stag had become too close to his comfort to recognize its danger. Then one afternoon, a sound came from outside. Footsteps. Different footsteps. Heavier, slower, more deliberate. The oxen became still. The stag lifted his head. The atmosphere changed. Someone was approaching. The master had come. Unlike the servants, he was not simply passing through. He was coming to inspect. The stag suddenly remembered the warning. But by then, the lesson was already standing at the door. The footsteps stopped at the door. For a moment, the stable became completely silent. The oxen stood still. The stag lowered himself into the hay, hoping that if he became small enough, quiet enough, perhaps reality would pass him by. But reality does not disappear because we refuse to face it. The door opened. Light entered the stable. The master stepped inside. He did not rush. He looked around carefully. Unlike the servants who came and went every day, the master was not simply present. He was observing. He noticed the dirty litter. He noticed the cobwebs. He noticed the disorder. "What is this?" he demanded. Immediately, the servants began moving. "Clean this. Fix that. Put everything in order." The stable that had seemed invisible to the stag was suddenly being examined. And this is where the ancient story becomes a mirror. Because life eventually inspects what we try to hide. A weakness, a bad habit, a fear, a decision we keep postponing. For a while, we may avoid consequences. We may convince ourselves that everything is fine. But avoidance is not transformation. What is hidden is not always gone. The stag remained frozen. His heart began racing again. The same body that once carried him away from danger now told him to run. But there was nowhere to go. The walls surrounded him. The hunters were outside. The master was inside. The place that once felt like protection had become a cage. Suddenly, the stag understood the warning he had ignored. The ox had been right. The danger was never gone. It had only not arrived yet. That difference is important. Sometimes people say nothing happened, but nothing happening does not always mean the decision was right. Sometimes it only means the consequence has not arrived. A person ignores discipline for one day. Nothing happens. They ignore it again. Still nothing happens. Eventually, they begin believing discipline was unnecessary. Then one day, the consequences arrive. The stag had lived inside that illusion. He believed his hiding place had defeated danger, but it had only delayed the confrontation. The master continued inspecting the stable. His eyes moved across the room. The walls, the hay, the oxen. Then suddenly, he saw something that did not belong. A movement, a shape, the outline of horns, the stag. There was no more hiding, no more waiting, no more pretending. He had been discovered. In that moment, his entire strategy collapsed. The oxen could not save him. The servants could not save him. The walls could not save him. His comfort could not save him. The stag had mistaken protection for preparation. And that mistake became his downfall. The struggle was brief. He had escaped the hunters before, but now the opportunity was gone. The place where he believed he would survive became the place from which he was taken away. Ancient stories are often harsh because their lessons are meant to be remembered. The stag was not destroyed because he sought shelter. He was destroyed because he forgot that shelter has a purpose. Shelter is meant to restore strength. It is not meant to replace the journey. There is nothing wrong with resting. There is nothing wrong with accepting help. There is nothing wrong with seeking protection during difficult times. The mistake is becoming so attached to protection that you lose your ability to move. A warrior rests, but he does not surrender readiness. The stag knew he was being hunted. He knew the stable was temporary. He was warned. But knowledge alone is not enough. Wisdom becomes powerful only when it becomes action. You can know that you need to change. You can know that a habit is hurting you. You can know that your environment is limiting you. But if you never act, nothing changes. The path requires movement. And movement requires courage. The warrior does not try to remove all fear. He learns to act wisely while fear is present. That is true strength. Strength appears in the person who leaves when leaving is difficult. It appears in the person who chooses growth over comfort. It appears in the person who listens to the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. The stag never reached that point. He found shelter but not wisdom. He found comfort but not mastery. And perhaps that is why this story still speaks today. Because the stable is not always a physical place. Sometimes the stable is a mindset. Sometimes it is a job you no longer love but refuse to leave because it is familiar. Sometimes it is a relationship that limits you, but uncertainty feels worse. Sometimes it is an old identity. You keep saying, "This is who I am," when the truth may be, "This is who I became while I was surviving." Survival and living are not the same thing. The stag survived the chase, but he never returned to the path. He confused survival with victory. That is the warning. Comfort can protect you for a season, but comfort without awareness can become a prison. But discomfort is sometimes the beginning of growth. The stag's story ends as a tragedy, but its wisdom continues. Do not wait until the door opens. Do not wait until consequences force you to change. Do not wait until the place that protected you becomes the place that traps you. If you know it is time to move, move with wisdom. Move with patience. Move with courage. Because the path does not promise certainty. It asks for awareness. It asks for discipline. It asks for action. The stag wanted safety. What he needed was wisdom. And that is the final lesson. The stag teaches us that shelter can save the body, but only wisdom can save the path. And the warrior who understands this never allows comfort to become his cage.